Hi, speaking all the way from Kenya about the conflict in the DRC. And of course, I thank the organizers of the All African People's Conference and Dr. Saranki from Malawi and Dr. J from Algeria for having solicited my opinion. The problem of the DRC is very complex, yet simple, in my opinion. And each draws very many different emotional outbursts that sometimes lose sight of the historical genesis of it. Let us dispense this in three tiers. One, let us get historical for a bit. The DRC is a very vast country that has not been managed well ever since independence. The DRC does not have its own internal capacity in order. The DRC does not have a functional army. The DRC does not even know its own population. They have never conducted a national census. So we deal with estimates. So you have a government in Kinshasa, which is in a different time zone from Goma, for example, so pretending over vast mineral deposit areas in the east, where it has absolutely no control. Yeah, and this started right after the killing of Lumumba. Lumumba was killed to further Western interests. And when Mobutu was installed, America and Belgium recruited Mobutu to work for the CIA. So Mobutu superintended over Congo for years as an agent of the CIA. So when solutions are trying to be found now, I think Western powers who have interfered with the DRC over the years must also take their responsibilities and claim their share of the problem. In my view, I think that is where we should start. I think the foreign powers that messed up DRC should first of all own up and say, look, this was done by us and it was wrong, so let us try to rectify it together with the sister African states. DRC is an African problem that will only be solved by Africans, in my view, again. So once that was done, when Mobutu was overthrown by Laurent Kabila, Kabila overthrew Mobutu, of course, with the assistance of the regime in Kigali. Now, Kabila needed the regime in Kigali for military firepower. He needed training of his ragtag soldiers. You see, Kabila overran Kinshasa basically with one, people who were fed up of Mobutu and offered to fight. Offering to fight from an emotional standpoint and winning a war are two different things. So they needed training, they needed arms, and Rwanda supplied this. Rwanda and Uganda supplied the technical expertise to fight. Now, that way they overran Kinshasa and toppled Mobutu, of course, with ex-FARC, ex-Mobutu soldiers who surrendered to Mobutu, to Kabila. Now, when Kabila got to Kinshasa, there arose a problem, a leadership problem, because Kabila essentially was not a politician. He was not a civil servant. He was never a politician. He was just an illegal mineral dealer in Tanzania, you know. He just had a bit of money. So he had to be taught some what I would call political dogma. And who would do this? Rwanda did it because they helped him in the war, and Uganda. Now, there was a bit of jealousy there between Rwanda and Uganda, as in who then gets a bigger chunk of the spoil. Here we are, we have kicked out Mobutu, you are in power. Who amongst us do you give a bigger cake? And that also brought conflict between Uganda and Rwanda. Now, that then was never properly sorted out. The successive regimes after Kabila, Joseph Kabila did not bother to do anything. Joseph just enriched himself and had fun. He's a playboy. So these pockets of dissatisfaction across the country remained. And Congo today has about 200 or 300 militia, different armed groups owned by different people, both local and foreign. So that is the problem that persisted. Now, once we got to the situation as it is now, Rwanda in itself, in the Goma area, have Banyamulenge. These are the traditional Tutsis who emigrated from Uganda and Rwanda into Congo. Remember, the border of Rwanda and Uganda is also homogeneous. You have the Bahima of Mbarara, which is Museveni's tribe, and the Tutsis of Rwanda, that is Kagame's tribe. These two ethnic groups speak the same language and have the same culture. Now, in the border of Uganda and Rwanda, you have the same people. In the border of Rwanda and Congo, you have the same people around the Goma area, right into Bukavu. So you have this Banyamulenge who are in the DRC. So they are essentially Congolese of Tutsi origin. So the easy way out to try to solve this problem is to say that these fellows are Rwandese and that they should go back to Rwanda. I am a Luo in Kenya. It's like telling me today, because the Luos emigrated from South Sudan, then I should go back to Sudan. I don't know anybody in Sudan. I don't have a home in Sudan. I don't have social networks in Sudan. So how do I go back? Yeah, that is the same thing. So these Tutsis in the DRC, who call themselves Banyamulenge, are fighting for their rights, are fighting for their share of national representation. Now, that is the birth of M23. So they grouped themselves, armed themselves, because that is the only language that people understand in the DRC. You fight. In the DRC, people don't talk. They fight. Now, that is a bit of history. So let us get into the present. In Rwanda, you have a regime that is very militarily strong as compared to the DRC. The army in the DRC that is called the FARDC is by far one of the largest armies in this part of Central Africa. They have over, I think, 150,000 soldiers, an infantry size of 150,000, which is ragtag, which is poorly trained, which is poorly fed, and poorly kitted. Rwanda, on the other hand, has got the opposite: a smaller army, properly trained, properly fed, properly kitted, and properly armed. And this is why Rwanda kind of has that military advantage over the DRC. It is frustrating for Tshisekedi, and I understand it, when a big country is being menaced and embarrassed by a small country. I get it. It's an African ego thing. But you see, The DRC also must take responsibility of its own predicament. Corruption in the DRC has messed up FARDC. I'm going to talk about the armies, not the government. If DRC cannot train its army, then who will? Tshisekedi tried to bring in foreign mercenaries from Belgium, from France, from Romania, and from the Czech Republic to train the militia that were anti-Banyamulenge, the Tutsis, not to train the FARDC. You see, that is a first mistake. So the government in itself is arming militia to fight another militia. Do you get it? Instead of a government that fortifies itself by training its own army to fight any rebellion within its territory. So Tshisekedi is also wrong here. When you arm so many different groups, then you stand the possibility of a variety of interest. You stand the possibility of foreign ownership. Remember, these are groups that can be bought and owned by people as they are. I know about 6 individuals who have militia in the DRC. And they're very powerful, rich men, and a woman for that matter. So there's gender parity in this thing, which is very interesting. Yeah, there's a woman who owns a militia in the DRC with about, 1,500 fighters. So some of these things are issues that the DRC and Tshisekedi could sort out internally, but he doesn't. And in that vacuum, foreign interests crop in, and he doesn't know where to turn. So he keeps hitting on Rwanda and holding it against Kagame for destabilizing his country. Has Kagame supported the M23? Has Rwanda supported the M23? It's a very sensitive question. The answer is yes. Yeah? Very popular? Sorry, very unpopular? But the answer is yes, they have. The M23 are kitted by the RDF. The M23 are armed by the RDF and the UPDF. The kit is Rwandese. The equipment is Uganda and Rwanda. That is the truth. So Kagame, as much as he's crying foul and getting frustrated and angry for being blamed for anything, must also take his share of responsibility. Museveni, on the other hand, is very quiet now because Kagame is taking the flak on his behalf. He also should come and take responsibility. Why is Rwanda and Uganda keen on arming the M23? I will start with Uganda for you. Uganda has had rebellion in the southwestern part of Uganda, in Chisoro area and all that area, Budibugyo going down to the border with the DRC, the ADF rebels, the Muslim outfit that wanted Uganda to become an Islamic state. Now, when UPDF pushed them out, they got into Congo. Rwanda, on the other hand, has got the Hutu militia, the Interahamwe, who went into the DRC after losing a fight with the RPF then in Rwanda. When the Interahamwe crossed into Congo, they metamorphosized into FDLR. FDLR in the DRC is a Hutu outfit that is armed by Tshisekedi and Burundi, because Burundi is also predominantly Hutu for the moment. Remember, the Tutsi regime in Burundi has been uprooted and a Hutu one installed. So they are supporting their Hutu brothers across the border. And FDLR launches attacks in Rwanda through Burundi most of the time. That is why you see that, interestingly enough, after capturing Goma, the M23 is moving southwards towards Bukavu. That is South Kivu. The two eastern provinces, the North Kivu, which is Goma, South Kivu, which is Bukavu. Bukavu borders Burundi. The port town is called Uvira. If you're in Bujumbura, you can actually drive to Uvira. I have taken this drive. So if, in their own calculation, if M23 moves down and takes over South Kivu, then they will close that route for FDLR to come into Burundi. Now Burundi is very scared because if they're going to have M23 across the border, they're worried about their existence and their stability. Now, whose interest is it for the M23 to not only capture Goma, but move down southwards to Bukavu? That is Kagame's interest. So we cannot also not discount Kagame's involvement in the support of M23. If it is for territory, then the Banyamulenge are territorial outside Goma, in Ruchuru, Kiwanja, going upwards, not downwards. Yeah? So the M23 should essentially be taking over their small village towns up there. That's where the Banyamulenge predominantly live and farm. They have beautiful cattle out there. They have fantastic cheese. I've partaken of them. Very, very good stuff. Beautiful climate. That if this country called DRC settled down, even the agricultural potential is massive. Now, with all this in mind, brings me to my third point. If you see Kagame getting frustrated with the East African community and William Ruto and calling France and all these things, I'm going to come to William Ruto at the end. But now, there are so many foreign players in the DRC. You have France, you have Belgium, you have Germany, you have the US, you have Romania, and you have Czech Republic. These are very, very active players in military terms. The US runs a platinum mine in Tenke Fungurume on the side of Lubumbashi, between Lubumbashi and Likasi, on your way to Kolwezi. There's a platinum mine there called Tenke Fungurume that gives the US first-class platinum. If you go inside that mine, it looks like Texas. And then if you get out of the fence, you're back to African poverty, disease, and all this nonsense. They have a private airstrip, and cargo planes come and go. Tenke Fungurume has been in existence for years. That's a US enterprise. And you have Marines looking over it. Not even the FARDC. The FARDC cannot get anywhere close to that line. So that is one. The Belgians have 3 copper companies in Lubumbashi. Now, if you have a copper company in Lubumbashi, naturally there must be a copper mine somewhere that supplies you with merchandise. And this Belgian copper is ferried in trucks from Lubumbashi through Zambia, Zimbabwe, into South Africa, all the way to Durban, and then they get onto ship from there and are ferried to wherever. Now, if you remember, take you back, when Kabila was being fought by the Rwandese and the Ugandan regimes that have propped him, this is Laurent Kabila, he turned to Angola and Zimbabwe. There's a reason for it. You know, he gave Angola and Zimbabwe mining rights in the DRC. The Zimbabweans were given a few diamond mines in Kananga and Bujimai. The Angolans were given gold mines on the other side of the DRC, the western part of the DRC, bordering Cameroon. That also caused some problems there with the Bamenda and all those guys. It's a whole convoluted kind of thing. So the DRC has actually been set for sale by its own leaders. This is why my cue is that the DRC must also sort out, 1, its politics, 2, its leadership issues. 3, its legitimacy in the region with a strong army. Nobody is going to do this for them. Nobody is going to train Congolese soldiers so that they defend Congo. Everybody who comes to train Congolese soldiers will train them so that they safeguard their interests. One of the reasons why a smaller force like the RDF walks all over FARDC like jackrabbits is because of lack of training. FARDC is not paid. People are paid $10, $20 a month, and it comes after 6 months because the generals who bring the money from Kinshasa in cash on cargo planes also divert it or steal it. Soldiers beg from citizens to eat. They don't have army barracks. They live on shacks and small inhabitable huts dug into the ground. Their kit is poor. If you looked at a FARDC soldier and an RDF soldier, you'd be like, mbingu na inchi, heaven and earth. It's a difference. So the DRC must first of all build its own capacity. Yeah? And if it does not, then nobody will help them. We are going to have conferences and summits, and call presidents, and all these guys. But the issue of the DRC will not be fixed. Finally, I want to just do a 2-minute recap on our East African Community Chair, William Ruto. William Ruto has got his own interests in the DRC, personal business interests. This is why he's being resisted in Kinshasa. The torching of the Kenyan embassy in Kinshasa is indicative of this. The Congolese don't like him because they know what he's doing in the DRC for himself. That reaction in Kinshasa was not by mistake or by somebody's design, as State House Nairobi will spin. It is not that. It is a resentment that has been boiling over time. There are so many embassies in Gombe, the Boulevard de 30 Juin, that is the main street in Kinshasa where the embassies are in Gombe area. Why did they torch Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, the US? They tried the US, they couldn't do it. Yeah. I have been to the Kenyan embassy in Kinshasa a couple of times, and it actually neighbors, is it Angola or one of these other Central African states? The next door neighbor was not touched. Kenya was touched. Why? It is because of that. So Ruto, as the chair of the East African Community, is not a neutral arbiter in the Congolese conflict now. That is why he called France. Okay? Why do you call France? Somebody who is an accomplice in the Rwandese genocide. And Rwanda is an active player in this conflict. That was not clever. The reason why he called France was because of Flexion. There's a company called Flexion, SPRL, that does mining just outside Goma. That company is owned by, okay? Now, when KDF was sent to Goma under the auspices of the East African Force, remember? KDF was assigned Goma Airport, and KDF was assigned the highway. It's not a highway, it's a bad road that leaves Goma to Ruchuru. Ruchuru is where Flexion does its mining. So KDF was manning the road to Ruchuru, and KDF was manning the airport. Why? It is very easy to see. Okay? They were guarding the road that brings in the merchandise, and they were guarding the airport that takes the merchandise out. Where does this merchandise go? It goes to France. That is why a call was made to France. The reason why I'm speaking like this is it pains me a lot to see that we have a crisis in our region, and our leaders are not serious about it. And as Kagame rightfully points out, do the Western powers want Congo to be stable? Do the Western powers want the Congolese situation to be sorted? The answer is no. Why? Because MONUSCO, the UN force that is resident in Goma, has been there for almost 30 years now. What is the return of investment? You have had Bangladeshis, Malawians, Indians, Pakistanis, everybody and anybody have sent their forces there over the 30 years. There's nothing to show for it. I've been trying to chase documentation about the overall budget of MONUSCO, and I didn't find it, but I will. We want to know how much money the UN has spent on MONUSCO, and did MONUSCO actually get that money? Because $1 million can be ratified in Geneva, and MONUSCO gets 200. That is also a UN flaw. So we must call all these things to order if we want Africa to grow. Ruto picks the phone and calls France, somebody who's losing interest and influence in Africa. What he was thinking, I think I have told you. Okay? Thank you very much, fellow Africans, and have a great day. Thank you.